Hi, this is George Alger, and welcome to today's segment on Our Ventura TV. Today we're going to be speaking with community advocate Bob Alviani about Ventura's Measure O. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you very much, George.
Could you describe to us what Measure O is?
Measure O is a half-cent sales tax for the city of Ventura that they want to increase $10.8 million in their annual budget. And there are a number of people in the community who don't feel that it's justified.
Okay, so let's get into the reasons why it wouldn't be justified.
Well, to begin with, we feel that the way the measure was written, that it's bad law. And it's bad law from the standpoint of it starts off as a 25-year measure. Usually these types of measures are much shorter term, and they have sunsets on them. Of course, the way the city has explained it is it does have a sunset. It's 25 years. That's a lifetime for most people.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the benefits of it, though, and what is intended to accomplish, so at least people who are not familiar with Measure O understand more about it.
Okay. It's supposed to benefit and enhance the city budget for an entire assortment of projects or needs that the city feels. And that covers everything from roads to public safety to just about anything that they could possibly throw into this. The problem is that none of this money is earmarked for any specific use. It's going to go into an account and be used as the council wishes. And the problem with that, even though they feel that there's going to be a very strict oversight of these funds, is that the Oversight Committee is not going to be able to direct money and spend the money as they feel it should be. It's going to be based upon the city council members.
Okay, so would you state that it's not so much in opposition to the purpose of the tax, it's in opposition to how the tax would be implemented, and that's the primary opposition?
The biggest reason is the way this particular measure was written. The city of Ventura has tried 2 other times to raise the sales tax. The first time they did, and it failed, was to go ahead and they did it as a special tax, which required a 2/3 vote, and it failed by about 2 or 3%. But at least it was specific, and it would have gone towards some very specific needs. The second time in 2009 that they attempted to do it, they did it as a general, the same as they're doing with this one. And this allows the council to go ahead and redirect money at any point in time in the future that they want money to go towards. And the city council has redirected money many times over the years. And even though this council will go ahead and say, well, it will go towards these specific things according to what they want, these council members will not be here over the next 25 years. They would be able to go ahead and change this at any point in time during their particular time that they're on the council and all future councils. And that's why this is such a problem. It goes for such a long time and it is not specific. And that's not a good way to go ahead and handle our city finances. We've had plenty of examples in the past as to how city councils have actually operated. There was a time in which the city council went ahead and raised the bed tax, specifically to raise money for a convention center in the city. They raised $9 million. That convention center never got built. It went towards other projects with future councils. And that the redirecting of money is a serious problem. The measure calls for this oversight committee, which is supposed to give the voters this feeling that, oh, everything will be fine, we'll have an oversight committee and they'll make sure that everything is taken care of. But the problem with that is that an oversight committee, of which I've been on oversight committees in the past, they usually get their information, first of all, from staff, and they also have they don't have a chance to actually look at the spending before it happens. It's always after the fact. And it could be anywhere from 6 months, 3-6 months afterwards, that they can see how the funds were spent. And I've never seen an oversight committee appointed by city council members who came back and objected to something and had anything done about it. They usually become a yes committee, and they rubber stamp things to the point where the citizens will eventually forget about it, and it will just be business as usual.
Okay. Now let's take a look at the other side. Since the city has had looked at it as a special tax in the past, they're aware of that. Why do you suppose that they chose not to do it this time?
Well, they usually don't do it because they are afraid that they cannot get a 2/3 vote.
Okay.
And they figure, well, this is the easiest way. We just have to go out there and convince the people. They spent $118,000 on a consultant, again, who did their surveys and said that if there's no opposition, then you've got a good chance of winning. But if there is a formalized opposition, we wouldn't go ahead and move forward with it. And there's been an opposition the last 2 times, and it has failed both times. The city council has this tendency to just kind of shoot themselves in the foot. In the most recent months, they had the Brooks Institute situation come up, which was another example of not watching the ball.
Now, I happen to have some familiarity with that, but not everyone who's watching this does. So since we've brought it up, could you at least quickly define that situation?
Yeah, Brooks Institute, a wonderful institution that had been around for, I think, over 50 years, came to Ventura about 10 years ago from Santa Barbara, was an institute that specialized in students in the photography area in particular, but other forms of media. They had, at their heyday, probably about 2,500 students enrolled. It had dropped to as low as 250 students in recent time. And in order to try and regroup, Brooks Institute came to the Ventura and actually wanted to go ahead and have their school in the City Hall Annex building on Poli Street. In order to accomplish that, they needed to go ahead and actually, depending on who you talk to, evict tenants on the 4th and 5th floor. The city will say they didn't evict anyone, their leases were up and they asked them to leave. However you explain it, there were a number of people displaced in order to make room for Brooks. City Council was encouraging, and in fact there were a couple of City Council members who were out in front of this trying to make this happen. They cut corners as to permits and everything else, never collected any bonds, never got any guarantees on their lease agreement, didn't collect any deposit, and didn't collect any rents. And after 2/3 of the way getting these 4th and 5th floor annex building ready to go, Brooks closed. And what this did, of course, it was devastating for the students and for the city too. The city was encouraged by what was going to happen. But when we started asking questions, now that the city was looking at a vacated 4th and 5th floor of the city-owned property, there was also the problem of how are you going to get the property back to make it leasable? There was a problem of, and will still have to be worked out, what are they going to do about the $825,000 in mechanics liens that were left unpaid? The city is not going to claim that they have any responsibility to pay it, but it doesn't speak well for the business community in the city to go ahead and leave those people high and dry. So when you ask the city council, what was the due diligence to determine that you're going to have a tenant by Brooks as a tenant what you looked at to determine that they were really viable. And all you get is, well, they showed us, last I heard, was a business plan. Well, I'm sorry, I spent 42 years in banking. You don't make a decision like that based upon a business plan. You base it upon a financial statement and tax returns and something a little more meaty than just a business plan. And we couldn't get that information from them. So, once again, this is a decision that the councils are responsible for.
Okay, it's an important topic. It deserves its own show. But to come back to what we're talking about in this conversation about Measure O, could you also comment on your perspective on how well the city does spend the money that they are getting?
Well, the city will have $104 million in this year's budget coming up, and it is the most they've had in quite a few years. For the most part, the city of Ventura is a well-run city, but then they go off on these special projects, and they, like Brooks as an example, but there have been other times in which they haven't really operated with managing the money as well as they could have. I think some of it is probably communication within the council and the city staff, which became apparent during the Brooks example, but there have been other times as well.
Okay, so we're just about out of time, but I just want to make sure that in terms of a perspective that's opposing Measure O, would it be safe to say that your primary concern is the how it would be implemented?
Our primary concern is, first of all, it's not needed.
Okay. More fundamental. Yeah.
We have a balanced budget. We've put money into reserves, and this is a council once again that just turned around and gave raises to the city staff, 4.5% plus another $1,500 bonus, and 270 of the employees of the city are making over $100,000 a year. So I think it's kind of an insult to the citizens to go ahead and start asking them to pony up more money in the form of a tax when the city actually has sufficient funds to operate on. As one of the council members, when this was voted on, said, "What's the hurry? This is not something that needs to be done right now." And yet they decided to go ahead and move forward with it anyway.
Okay, Bob. So we are out of time now. Let's wrap this up. And could you provide a website that viewers could go to for more information? And if there's a summating message you'd like to convey to the viewers, this would be a good time to express it.
Right. We have formed a citizens group for No on Measure O, but most of our background has been written by Venturans for Responsible and Efficient Government. It's referred to as Ventura.org. So that group has been around since 2006 when the first tax measure was brought forward.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much.
This is George Alger signing off for this segment of Our Ventura TV. Until we meet again.